So a week is a long time, so let's just recap where we are and where we're trying to head to. It's always a good time, good to recap. So we're right in the middle of the second chapter, the second parak, on the 15th verse. We were probably going to hopefully finish the second parak tonight, begin the third parak, and then we're going to go a little faster. And Shavuos night will depend how many shirim will have to be given to finish. But maybe we'll save Shavuos night for why we read Ruth on Shavuos. Maybe some Yibum we'll get to hopefully by the fourth chapter. The third chapter is going to start off really with the beginning of Boaz and Ruth's relationship. And we're in the middle of it now. It's going to get a little bit more intense, a little bit more in the third chapter. So we're a little bit background to that. And I found a few very, very important life lessons in the end of the second chapter that I really felt was worth it to really glean from and to really understand. And I felt that would be important to speak about. So the 15th verse says, so that Ruth got up, v'takam l'lakit v'yitzav Boaz asnarav. Boaz told the men that were there by the field, working in the field, he told them, Gam bein ha'amarim telakit v'lo tachlimuha. So he says, you should know that v'lo tachlimuha, don't embarrass Ruth. She's also going to collect within the sheaves, by the sheaves, and don't embarrass her. V'lo tachlimuha. So this provides insight, I believe, into the society that was going downhill, as we saw from the first chapter. He had to tell them v'lo tachlimuha, because if you didn't tell them, you might treat a poor person in the fields like Ruth in a very, very terrible way, in a very disgraceful way. So it just shows you paint the picture. You have Boaz, the Gadol Hador, the biggest rabbi, the leader, who we saw already enacted how you speak to people, you used to greet them with the name of God, to restore their divine image. On the other hand, he's dealing with people that are about to embarrass, are used to embarrassing poor people collecting in the field. What did you say? Right, snood, right. So to embarrass a poor lady collecting, that's so opposite of what we Jews hold of. We treat poor people with such dignity. And so that just shows you an insight of the setup here of Boaz, try and deal with his society. And Ruth, what she put herself into. She came from this royal home and she gave everything up and she said, I'll collect for you. And she goes and she puts herself in a very vulnerable position, a position where you might get made fun of. I don't know if this ever happened to anybody, but there's sometimes you're asked to do things that, for me it was, coming back to my environment, I was already more religious and facing those friends that weren't, right? You feel, right? You're always on the defense. Someone's going to embarrass you, someone's going to say something, and you got to be strong. So Ruth, it just shows you how much she was willing to go through to help out her mother-in-law and do what she had to do. Next verse. The Gamshol Tasholula mina tzavasim azaftim velikta velo tigaruba. You must also put some stalks out of the heaps and leave them for her to glean, and do not scold her. So here we see that they had to go and put some stalks for her. They had to go out of their way. They were told to go out of your way. Put some stalks for Ruth, for her to collect. Which shows you that she wasn't willing to go ask for stalks. Boaz, he saw that she was unwilling to ask. And he had to tell them, go put the stalks out. Which fits very nicely. And one of the themes that we've been mentioning is the ultimate independence that Ruth is exhibiting. And the ultimate dependence that Lot felt with Avram Avinu, which she ran away from. The feeling that when someone's always doing kindness for you, now, as one pasuk says in Tanakh, you become like a servant to them, subservient, subjugated to them. And Ruth, she's coming as a total independent lady. And that's why when she showed Naomi, I'm ready to convert, the Medrash we saw says, with you, without you, I'm converting. Then Naomi's like, okay, now come. So Ruth, what is that?
Do any of the poor women,
ask
them leave some extra stalks in me?
Good question. It would seem like if they needed some, then they would ask, yeah. Because he has to tell her specifically to leave them for her. So Gary's asking, maybe it's not specifically her. Maybe it's any other woman.
Well, could it also be that, because I know, isn't the law that like they're not just supposed to pick up figs that fall,
Right.
Isn't he telling them like make more things fall? So
Right, correct.
It's not necessarily that she's especially shy, but he's being especially generous, I think.
Interesting. Right. But if she was very upfront with him, there'd be no need, right?
Well, I guess she wouldn't know the law, so she wouldn't know if she's supposed to ask her.
Right. So that we saw in was last week, 2 weeks ago. One of the things the Gemara says Boaz noticed about her was that she kept the halacha. She took 2 and not 3. He saw she was very meticulous. But yeah, it's a good point. You're right. From this pasuk, it's.
There, I just think, any poor person here who is following the law and picking what they're supposed to pick wouldn't have the nerve to ask,
Right.
give me more.
Right. Okay, good. Okay. Verse 17 says, "V'talakit pasada ad ha'aref." She worked until the evening time, and then she took what she needed, and vayihi. It was about an ephah of barley, ke'ephah sa'orim. Now, it's interesting that the Megillah points out that she worked until the evening. She worked until the evening, meaning I think it shows a certain level of diligence. She worked and she worked and she worked. Why is it telling us she worked until the evening? To tell you, she worked. She had a job to do, and she did it, because we're planting the seeds of a future kingship. King has a job, you do the job. You don't finish. You don't give up until you're done. The focus and the determination to do what you have to do is something that she exhibited. The ke'ephah se'orim, so that's very reminiscent of Parshas Emor that we had 2 weeks ago. It's a measurement, an ephah. The omer is a series ha'ephah, a tenth of an ephah. So it's an ephah of se'orim, of barley. Okay, now we'll get to a little bit of a bigger picture in the next 2 psukim. So she has she has everything that she needs. She's collected it all. She has a lot with her, and she's now going back to her mother-in-law, which, remember, her mother-in-law doesn't know anything that's happened so far. She sent her, Ruth went to get food for her, hopefully, and Naomi doesn't know what happened afterwards. So Vatisa Vatavo, she carried it back with her to the city, Vatere Chamoso, and all of a sudden, Naomi saw her. It sounds like she saw her from, almost from a distance, like she was awaiting her and expecting her to come. Eis asher lakta, vatotzi vatitenla, eis asher hosira, and she saw what she had gleaned, and gave her what she had left over, Okay, so then Naomi starts her interaction with Ruth. Yeah, just one thing that the Medrash points out in this pasuk, Vatisa Vatavo, that Ruth went and she didn't stop with anybody who was immoral. It says, Lo amda im haprutzim. There were prutzim, people who were immodest, people who were porates, usually makes a hole in a wall, hole in a fence, called porates gather. Ruth went, collected, came back. Many distractions on her way home in an immoral society, and you're like the princess in the middle, and she went directly back to Naomi. Okay, and now Naomi begins her interaction with Ruth. And this is where we're going to hopefully see a little bit of it, of a bigger picture. Vatomer lachamos, Naomi tells her mother-in-law tells her. So, Eifo lakachta ayom, 2 questions. First question is, where did you get this all? You went and you came back, with riches. What happened over here? And then another question, Va'ana asisa. So, Va'ana, where did you do this? So, Eifo likatata, where did you gather and where did you do? We'll see what that means in a second. And then she gives her a bracha, Yihi makirech baruch, the one who recognized you. So, should be blessed. And then Ruth goes and tells Naomi exactly what happened today. And she goes through the whole story. And then she says, Vatomer Shema Ish. After she says the whole story, then she says, and by the way, the name of this person, his name is Boaz. So we'll start just from the end of the pasuk and work backwards for a second. First, she tells her what happened today. A man was kind to me. He took notice of me. He helped me. And then she tells Naomi his name was Boaz. And we pointed out that the first pasuk in the second parak says, and the Medrash picks up on it, that Ushmo Boaz. And we brought a Medrash that says that Tzadikim first says Ushmo, and then it says Ushmo and then Boaz. Rishayim, it says their name and then Ushmo. And we pointed out that the Medrash says that tzaddikim, they do things because it's the right thing to do, and then afterwards it mentions their name, meaning their name is almost like an afterthought. They don't do things for the name. Rishayim do things for the name. They fill yourself up. Tzaddikim don't do that. It's just interesting parallel over here that first Ruth tells Naomi everything that happened to her today. There was a man, and after all the kindness that she describes, then she says, and his name was Boaz. Sometimes when you're telling a story over, if you ever were in contact with a big person, let's say in any field, whether it's in music, whether it's in in the sciences, whether it's in Torah, so you come back, the first thing you naturally want to say is all your excitement. Yeah, I met Rav Chaim, and also he gave me a bracha, and also it was very nice, and also it's like, and yet Ruth, first she says, what happened? I was treated like this. This is what Hashem did for me. This is how I was treated. By the way, his name was Boaz. Now the by the way is a big by the way because Boaz was the Gadol Ador. He was the leader of the generation, a relative of Naomi. A very pivotal part of this whole story is going to be the fact that it's Boaz, not a random person. But yet Ruth, it seems like to me, doesn't get carried away with that part. By the way, it was Boaz. Guess what? It was Boaz. He took note of me. It was so exciting. No, this is how Hashem took care of me today. You should know who did it. Oh, the messenger, the shaliach. His name was Boaz. It's always it's good to keep in mind sometimes when Hashem showers us with kindness. We get all excited, so we sometimes focus on the person or the location or the amount of money Hashem sent me today. Versus just like the first thing is He gave me, He took care of me. Also happened to be, I met with a person who, a very rich person, a very wealthy person. Okay. The two questions. What are these two questions? Eifo lakatata va'ana asisa. So it's two questions. The word ana, I saw, is brought down in Shir Hashirim in the 6th chapter. Ana holech dodech. Ana holech dodech. It says there, where's my beloved gone? Ana has an implication of searching. So Naomi's not just asking, hey, where'd you get all this food? Because that would have sufficed with one question of, where'd you get all this food? Where'd you get all these sheaves? But she's Ana, like, 1 second, what happened over here? We pointed out that the way Hashem's running the show is like unbelievable. So many things are happening to fall into place. And the sensitive eye and the sensitive ear is always taking note of that. We mentioned last week, Vayikar Mikra. It doesn't mean a coincidence. It means that things were sped up in an unnatural way, and it's up to us, the player, up to the reader, up to the person that's happening to focus and figure out what happened over here. So Anna, Naomi's searching like, hold on, step back. We're here. We came impoverished. I came from a life that I used to live, left for 10 years and came back, and now we need food. Very embarrassing. We came back to a city of people who did not greet us the way, we should have been greeted, and total upheaval, and we needed food. So my wonderful daughter-in-law said, I'll go get you food. And as she comes back, and my relative Boaz, he's the one who took care of her out of all people, and he took notice of her. He's from the highest of the high, and she's from the lowest of the low, and yet he took care of her. So Naomi's searching, Va'ana, how'd this happen? So she's starting to realize, there's starting to be divine signs getting clearer and clearer. Something bigger's happening here. Naomi's starting to realize there's a bigger message over here. There's a kingdom that's going to be built. There's a bigger picture. We're going to have to get these two people together somehow. And she starts realizing that and acting upon the divine missions and the divine messages that God is giving her. And a symbol of that is when she blesses, Yehi Makirech Baruch. Blessed be he who took such generous notice of you. A bracha is like, when you see someone going and they're starting to succeed, you get all excited. Okay, she got a bracha, you should keep going. Keep going. So Naomi sees that Ruth's things are really falling into place for her. So she gives a bracha. Now she gives a bracha for Yehi Makirech Baruch. Yehi Makirech Baruch is someone took notice of her. To makir is to really understand somebody. She saw not just someone just gave her some food, someone noticed her. Someone took note of her, which we pointed out was only from somebody like Boaz, who was there to restore the divine image in people. And that's why they made an enactment to greet people with the name of God. Such a person notices people way beyond their superficiality. He sees much beyond them. If you would look at her, yes, she happens to be beautiful, it's true, but okay. But we said he saw tznius, modesty. He saw wisdom in her. And he took note of that. Boaz is also starting to realize, hold on, I just tried to restore. I'm trying to deal with these people that are so far from what a divine person is, and someone chanced upon my field and is in such a way. So Naomi's starting to realize, Boaz is starting to realize, Ruth is maybe somewhere in between. We'll see in a second. Yeah. And here comes a very important line. Ruth tells Naomi in this same verse, in verse 19, you know who I saw? She told him, Eis asher asasa imo. Eis asher asasa imo. What does it mean, Eis asher asasa imo? Whom she had worked with. So it says the Medrash, an incredibly important point. Tani b'shem Rabbi Yeshua, Medrash Rabbah, and Hey Tes. Yoser more than mimasha balabayis osa ima ani. So you have two people. Poor person knocks on the door. Yes, come in. Please come sit down. Let me feed you. So what happened? And then the guy leaves. So how do you feel? Like $1 million. I just helped him. You feel great. You feel benevolent. You feel like, wow, I really did something good for the world today. Says the Medrash, more than you feel good for helping another person, more than you feel good for running the world's greatest gemach, charity organization, more than you feel running the greatest soup kitchen, more than that feeling of benevolence, Yoser mimasha balabayis osa ima ani, ha'ani osa im balabayis. The poor person does to the giving person, the owner of the house. So you have two people who are giving to each other. One is giving by receiving, right? The word nasan is the same words backwards and forwards, right? I mean, the giver, both people are giving. You're giving, and he's also giving by receiving. So more than, the Medrash picks up right here, more than the person who is giving, the ani does for them, which is another fascinating point to consider where Ruth came from Lot. We pointed out in different times that chesed is the most beautiful thing and can be very dangerous. Chesed shel emes, ultimate chesed, is done with a person who, God forbid, passes away. When you help them, there's no feeling from the other side like they're indebted to you. It's ultimate chesed. Anybody else a person does chesed for, you got to be careful. The second you're doing for them, they now feel indebted to you and subjugated to you. And Rav Obi writes in Ali Shor, you have to make sure you do chesed with chachma, with wisdom. You have to figure out how at the end of the day, the person you gave to feels he gave to you way more than you gave to them. That takes a lot of work. You can give and give and give, and it's great, and you feel great, and you unloaded your whole fridge and your wallet, and you gave him everything. And that person walks away feeling, okay, he has food now, but, I'm so nice. The guy needed a meal, so I gave him a meal. But you know what he feels? He feels like a guy who really needed a meal. But if there's a way we can do chesed with chachma, with wisdom, to try to figure out, whenever you do an act of chesed, how can that person feel he's given to me much more? I've been waiting for guests for weeks. I called 3 people, and they all said no. And it's like, it's just so hard for me. And there you came, and you said yes, and you brought so much life to my house. That's a whole different story of a person who comes for a meal now. He feels like, oh my gosh, we had a Seder this year, first time having guests. I tried to mention it many, many times. I really felt they gave way more to our house. My kids saw a guest at a Pesach Seder. It was so helpful in a real way. It takes work. You have to think about it. If you don't think about it, you're just going to go, yes, Michael, that would be you. So we appreciate that. So one of the holy guests. But it's chachma with chesed. And that's what Ruth in her way, she did more for Boaz, which is the ultimate independence. The receiver of chesed, who now is molding herself and forming herself into a tremendous giver, which means you're a person that can take and a person you can give, and no one's losing out. Everyone's only gaining, which is the ultimate seed for royalty, of to have the king's job. The Rambam says, Leiv kol ha'am, he's the heart of the nation. You have to make sure that every person in your synagogue, in your city, in your society, they're going to feel, after you give to them, because you're the king, they're going to feel that they're being heard, that they're contributing, their presence is adding something. That's a very hard thing. I just want to read a beautiful part from this beautiful book from Moshe Miller. There is magic in these words, which erupt with the power to move humanity in an entirely new direction. This is a transformative, intoxicating moment of immeasurable possibility. With these words, Ruth begins to address the problem of her ancestor Lot. She begins to provide a solution to the most vexing of creation's riddles, the problem of chesed. Her journey in the footsteps of Avram carried her to the field of Boaz, and from there to a place where no human had gone before. Naomi has just seen Ruth return home with a haul of grain. She's astounded. During their first week in Beit Lechem, they were completely ignored. Suddenly, Ruth appears, laden with food, and Naomi naturally wonders, who favored you with this recognition? Somebody took really good care of you. And whoever he may be, God should bless him. So how does Ruth answer? How does she answer? Nobody took care of me. Hashem took care of me, but nobody took care of me. I took care of somebody. And the verse repeats the claim twice. With whom she worked, and the name of the man with whom I worked. The first indicates Ruth's internal monologue, and the second, its articulation in her dialogue with Naomi. This is a paradigm-changing view of the world. The poor person, he brings the medrash, does more for the rich person than the rich person does for them. So here Ruth takes the first step resolving the problem of chesed. She says, and this is important for anybody who's either a recipient of chesed or doing chesed, don't talk about how much I owe this man for being kind to me. Instead, talk about how much he owes me for allowing him to be kind to me. By allowing him to be kind to me, I transformed his life. And it says, Harbe Tovas Asisi, the Medrash says, I did so much good for him. You can't even imagine what I did for this man today. I changed his whole life. And then the last thing he says here is that we pointed out, when she first went out to get food, what does it say? She was looking for chen. She wasn't looking for chesed. She wanted chen, grace. Grace. She was looking for a relationship, looking for meaning, looking for some mutuality over here between two people, a relationship that you can give and I can give, and no one's being totally dependent on the other. We're working with it together. Ruth refused to seek charity. Instead, she sought chen. She did not seek a benefactor. A lot of people, when they need, they just seek benefactors. She searched for a relationship. Only then, within such a relationship, would she take food. I'll take food. She'll take the food, and she'll bring it home, but within a certain context. Only from someone who recognized the immense favor she had done for him to accept the droppings in his field. In this sense, Ruth is the one who truly returns from the fields of Moab. Our verse expresses the life-changing principle she brought back from those fields. And it's interesting. We said, the Medrash says, where did we find David HaMelech? We found him in Stome. So it's interesting. Stome was a total independent place. Everything, there's no anti-chesed. So it's interesting. You would find David HaMelech there, but it could be, maybe one could suggest, there's a certain attribute of independence which is very healthy. They took it to the extreme. And maybe Lot felt to Avram Avinu took the chesed to the extreme. So Ruth is now coming and blending the two. Total chesed, we'll see, it's going to mention numerous times the chesed that she does, with an independence. And that's the most beautiful chesed. Then the person feels like he's in the divine image of God. I heard today from our guest who was here from Los Angeles. He told me this morning, one of the commentators in the 1600s, the Mishnas Chachamim, he said that you always refer to chesed as it's gomel chasadim. Gomel chasadim. It's gomel chasadim. It's always multiple. It's always plural. Always two people that are giving. It says gomel chasadim. Okay, let's continue. So that's just one very important. We see a transformation in her now. You see a person who's able to emerge as a recipient and the ultimate giver. And it's a paradox to most people. It's almost a certain dichotomy here. It's a contradiction, but there's always these two parts. And how important is to do chesed with chachma. Olam chesed yibana. Hashem created the world with chesed, and He did it with a lot of chachma. Bring you a proof. The proof is all of us. We're taking all day long, right? Taking and taking and taking and taking, and it's and we really feel like we did it. So can you imagine? We're the recipients, and it's a real work to feel indebted to Hashem. We tend to feel, yeah, we got it, it's real. But these two things are very important to keep in mind. Okay. Verse 20. V'tomer Naomi, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, Baruch Hu Hashem. Wow, it's unbelievable. First thing you do, you hear about something, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem in the fullest sense of Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, Baruch means you're the source of blessing. Every time you make a bracha, Baruch, it means you're like a breicha. The commentators say you're a source of water. You're a source of blessing. Right away, first thing is like, Baruch Hu Hashem. Asher lo azav chasto asachayim v'asamesim. Hashem didn't abandon the chesed of the living or of the dead. Here she's alluding to a concept that we'll get to in the fourth chapter, God willing. about the idea of Yibum, and she's saying that Hashem hasn't abandoned me, the living person, who's going to be named, will be hopefully, will continue, or the dead person, Elimelech, Machlon, their names will also be continued. Okay. Naomi, it never crossed her mind that this relation was going to happen. The Medrash says Boaz is close to 80 years old, and he died soon after he had a child with Ruth at the end of the Megillah. He was 80. He was old. He went through 60 children that were buried. He went through a lot. His wife died. He went through a lot. And Ruth is going to have a relationship with him. And yet Naomi here is starting to see, okay, Hashem hasn't abandoned us, the living or the dead. There's hope here. There's hope. They might go into a relationship together, and that might continue my name, Elimelech's name. This might really happen. And the faith is starting to build. The more she sees God's kindness, the more she starts realizing, oh my gosh, this might really happen. Okay. Yeah. She says Baruch Hashem, by the way, not at the end of the process. Even at the first step. Something is happening. Baruch Hashem. We wait till the end of the process. When I get the $300,000 that I need, Baruch Hashem. When the first dollar comes from left field, okay, that's nice, but no. You got something? You thank Hashem, even if it's the first step of the process. You don't wait for step 2 right away. Like we pointed out last time, it's all the small things we mentioned. Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, Ruth. It's the small things that a person does that builds a person. Small expressions of thanks, which are hard. The bigger ones are easier, but those are the things that we're learning of how to produce our own, to grow in our own right, and how to produce a David HaMelech. Okay, I really wanted to get to one more point. Big one. Okay, so let's see if we get there. Yeah, Vatomer Ruth Hamovia ki Amar. Yeah, the 21st verse. So Ruth said that he even told me to stay close to my workers until my harvest is finished. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Vatomer Naomi el Ruth Kalasa, her daughter-in-law, Tov Biti. She calls her daughter-in-law and her daughter. Kitetzi narosa v'lo yifku bach besada acher. Okay, she answered her daughter that you go out with the girls and not be annoyed in some other field. Just stay with them. Okay. V'tidbak b'na'aros. So she stayed close to the maidservants of Boaz. Ad close k'tzira sa'orim u'k'tzira chitim v'teishev es chamosa. And then she returned to her mother-in-law. Okay, so this idea that there was the harvest of the barley and the harvest of the wheat. So she stayed there until the barley harvest and the wheat harvest were finished. So that's usually about 3 months. It's right between Sfiras Omer, which is you bring a korban, a sacrifice of barley, until you bring a sacrifice of wheat by Shavuos. Okay, 1 second. Oh, yeah, okay. So I think so that concludes, I believe, the second parak. So we'll just start for a second, the third parak, and it's getting a little bit late. V'tomer la Naomi chamosa biti alo avakesh lach manoach asher yitav lach. Naomi says, her mother-in-law says to her daughter, I must seek a home for you, a manoach. Manoach is a resting place. Manoach is a place that will be very good for her. And here we're just going to stop and we'll say one more point and this will end. The Targum on the side here says that she made an oath, that Naomi made an oath that she's not going to finish. She's not going to stop until she finishes the process of trying to get Ruth married to Boaz. David HaMelech in Tehillim in Kuf Lamed Beis, 132nd chapter, he also made an oath to Hashem. He's not going to stop until he finds a place for the Beis HaMikdash. The word manoach is used here very interestingly. It says, Naomi asks for a manoach for Ruth. Naomi has a lot of self-interest in this also. If you go get married to Boaz, that's great for me. My name will be restored. The kingship will continue. But I want for you a manoach, which if we remember from the first chapter, Naomi told them, go back to Moab. He says, and Hashem will give you menucha there with a husband. He'll give you menucha. So here she's saying, I want to give you a manoach. Before she said, go get a menucha. So the Medrash says in both places that the woman's only going to find menucha in the house of her husband. And I just want to stop for a second. Resting. Shabbos menucha is to rest. So she wants to give her a rest, a menucha. So there's a Rashi in Shmos that talks about Shabbos, Shabboson, right? And Rashi says, menuchas margoa velo menuchas arai. A menuchas margoa, a calm rest, velo menuchas arai, not a casual rest. So I heard very beautifully from Rav Aaron Lopiansky. We have two kinds of restings. There's a rest when you're working very hard. I need a rest. Get my koach, get my strength, and keep going. That's one rest. There's another rest, which is your final destination. When you're working at something and you complete it, that's another form of menucha. Shabbos, Shabboson, Rashi in Parsha Kisisa says, it's a menuchas margoa velo menuchas arai. Shabbos is not the day of the week. You get a little more strength and you rest up for the work week. It's the opposite. Shabbos is the destination. Shabbos is the goal. You stop on Shabbos. That's the ultimate rest. You work the whole week for Shabbos. Not Shabbos gets you now more strength for the rest of the week. Although that might be true. So what's your goal? What's your goal and where are you headed? So Ruth is saying, I want for you to have a manoach. I want you to go. I want you to find a husband. I want you to marry him. You're going to find ultimate rest in that home. That's what the Medrash says. The ultimate menucha is going to be in the house with your husband. Now, yes, it's obviously referring to marriage, but I think there's something else that I think that menucha, we often look for menucha, tranquility. We often look for serenity, peacefulness, calmness, mindfulness. We're looking outside of ourselves. We're looking on Google. What are the top 10 manoachs? Where can I find it? So the Caribbean, and then Vegas, and wherever the celebrities go, I'm gonna find my manoach, my menucha over there. And then people run around for 30 years, spending all their money, and they go. And at the end of the day, they don't seem to be so much more calm, relaxed, happy. And sometimes you meet people that, they have 6 kids, 7 kids in one room, the small bedroom, and they're filled with joy. Menucha, yes, it's talking here specifically about a husband, but I think it's also, menucha is, look inside of yourself. When you work internally, you can find tremendous menucha. Then when you interact with the outside world, then you can give. There's a beautiful pasuk in Mishlei, Parakid Aleph, pasuk 17. Gomel nafsho ish chased. A gomel nafsho, a giver to his soul, is considered a kind person. Strange. One who gives to his own soul is a kind person. One who gives to his own soul is arrogant. What is he doing? Give to others. Giving to others is a kind person. So Rashi talks about how it's giving to your family, your krovim, your loved ones. The word gomel is an amazing word. Gemilos chasadim. Okay, there's also a camel's called a gamal. There's a relationship between that. Vayigma, what happened? Vayigama, what does that mean? To wean. When the child, right? We had in Bereshit, when the child stops nursing, it's called gomel. Vayigamal. He was nigmal. He's now weaned. What does that mean? He becomes independent. He no longer needs that anymore. Gomel chasadim is the ability to give to somebody, right? And make them independent, not a dependent. Gomel chasadim. And the other way around also. Gomel is the ability where you are independent, you're giving from the right place, and gomel, you're making them feel like they're independent too. They're giving to you. That's what the Medrash told us before. They're the givers. So you're helping them become more independent, more transformative. You're bringing their strengths out. So I was thinking, Hagomel, when you make it, that's after Hashem saves you or you go on an airplane, things like that. Yeah, you're saying Hashem is one who gives kindness. But that's also really could mean you're putting me on my feet. You're giving me, I was dependent on you on the airplane, Okay, now I'm back on my 2 feet, maybe, suggesting, I don't know. Shigmalani kol tuv, right? So, gomel nafsho, I thought meant, gomel nafsho means you have to make your nefesh a nefesh that's independent. You have to live not dependent on your surroundings, but independent of your surroundings. You have to be people, we have to all be people who are independent. A bad day and a bad person next to you and bad life circumstances, unfortunate, does not create a lack of menucha. You can have menucha in any situation. It depends how much we're investing internally. The more internally we're invested, the more our nefesh becomes a nefesh of gomel, independent. We're weaned off of everything around us. It's you, it's your nefesh, it's Hashem. At the end of the day, that's all it is. It might be very hard, and it might be very, very hard. And sometimes it's not even possible to think how I'll ever get to that level. That's true. But the small steps, as we're learning, is really the path to get there. And Naomi tells Ruth, all of this is a manoach asher yitav lach. This is good for you. It's like lech lecha, Rashi says. For your own benefit, Hashem's saying. You're leaving everything behind? Yeah, it's good for me too, Hashem. You'll be monotheistic, the whole world will know me. Investing in yourself is the greatest good. The greatest good a person could do. That doesn't take away from helping other people, but when you help other people, when you're in a place of independence, then you're able to help them become independent. If we're always dependent, how can we ever make someone else an independent? It doesn't work that way. But the more we're independent and the more we have what to give, then we're able to give chesed with chachma and turn the other person into an independent even when they're receiving. We'll be receiving from giving to them more than they'll be giving to us. So with this, we'll continue next time, hopefully continuing in the Rus meeting Boaz. And Achshon, I failed. I apologize. No, later days, right? Right. Oh, when Marv's at 10 o'clock, it's going to be great.
I went on and got the rest of the.
You got the rest. So just a few big lessons to remember, like we mentioned in the beginning, was so first of all the idea of manoach, what manoach means, what real chesed means. They're giving to you much more, and how Rus we are seeing this transformation, starting off with Orpah couldn't do it, she went back. Rus is going, and how did she go? Independently, and now she went to go into the fields. Look like a pauper for what? To do for her mother-in-law. And at the end of the day, she says confidently, I did way more for Boaz than he did for me. That's an amazing person. That's a person who's ready to take on the Jewish people. Because, I don't know if you heard, but we're not always so easy to deal with, right? Moshe told Yehoshua, be careful, they're stubborn. You got to know each person's strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, exactly. Am Kshei Oref. But Am Kshei Oref, you can turn the Oref into something which is very positive. It's interesting, Oref is also the back of the neck, right? The Egla Rufa. Am Kshei Oref. The neck is always the part that connects the head to the heart, right? The stiff-necked people, yeah. The neck is the part that connects the head to the heart, which is the hardest challenge in life, to connect our thoughts and our lessons to real life. Am Kshei Oref can go one of two ways. You can live it so strongly, here at the Russian Jews, they'll do anything not to give into, to Stalin and communism. They'll do anything. On the other hand, people are very stubborn. You have to hasirosi leiv evan. The pasuk in Yecheskel says, remove the heart that's of rock. We're begging you, take your heart of rock and remove it, and v'samti leiv chadash, put a new heart in. So the Am Kshei Oref can be the part that connects the head and the heart, or the part will say, I'm never connecting it, I'm going to remain in my stubborn ways. It's up to us to choose. But the more we recognize, like Rus is recognizing, and Naomi is recognizing, and Boaz is recognizing all the chesed Hashem does for us, and we view the world now from that perspective, we're able to give to other people with a chachma, and then everyone feels great. It's a nasan, and it goes both ways. So Bez Hashem, we should try to be the greatest givers we could be, with making everyone feel like they're a Tzelem Elokim, like they're really in God's image. And through that, we'll become our own kings, our own malchus will be able to develop in our own homes and our own lives. And gomel nafsho is a ish chesed. If you're giving to yourself, you want to invest in yourself, don't think you're not doing a chesed. You're doing the biggest chesed. Because afterwards, everyone you interact with, the more independent you are of a gomel, you're weaned off, the more you can help other people wean off of their dependencies. And when everyone is independent, so that's what the Ramchal says is the ultimate emulation of God, being like Him. He is totally independent, relies on nothing. The more we rely on nothing, the more we're independent with Him. With Him, independent with Him. Right? Tamim tiya im Hashem Elokecha. Walk with Hashem. So we're going to be the best Jews that we could be, and Bez Hashem will all be the greatest givers, and Olam Chesed Yibana, it'll continue. to the ultimate giving of Mashiach. And we stay tuned next week, hopefully, for the continuation of the traveling through Ruth.